Hello again and welcome once again to The Verdict. I'm Mick Cornett along with Kent Myers. We're here each week meeting interesting people and talking about topical issues. And I don't know that anything is more topical right now than football, and we've got a guy who's very much in charge of what's going on down at Oklahoma.
Well, we do indeed. Joe Castiglione, the athletic director, will be with us again, as he has been on a number of occasions, almost several times a year since we got started. He's always kind with his time. Got a lot on his plate right now. It's a busy time of year with of course, fall sports getting cranked up, the facilities getting worked on, and all the other things that he has to say grace over. He's very kind to give us some time.
He runs one of the most high-profile athletic departments in the country. Hundreds of student athletes come through his program every year. Lots of stories that he could tell and lots of issues that he has to deal with right on the front lines. It's all coming up today on The Verdict. Joe Castiglione, the athletic director at the University of Oklahoma, coming up today on The Verdict.
Driving rain, blistering heat, and bitter cold. 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. Chesapeake drills non-stop for natural gas on American soil. Chesapeake drills more new gas wells than anyone else, and from those wells collects the most drilling information and acquires more 3D seismic images, leveraging every efficiency to improve the odds of finding more natural gas every day with every well we drill. The better job we do of discovering bigger reserves of clean-burning American natural gas, the greater the prosperity of our nearby communities, our state, and our nation. And as long as there are more gas reserves to be found here in the U.S., we will never rest. Chesapeake. Natural gas wins the day.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett and Kent Myers, and Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
Today we're once again pleased to have Joe Castiglione join us, the athletic director at the University of Oklahoma. Joe has been at Oklahoma for 10 years now and has had an extraordinarily successful run as athletic director in his position of overseeing all the athletic programs at the university. I'm going to try to do this by memory from prior appearances on The Verdict, but he started at the University of Maryland, then went to Rice, then went to Georgetown, then the University of Missouri for 17 years, and then 10 years ago came to OU. That's roughly correct, I think. We're sure glad we captured him and can keep him. He has recently obtained his master's degree and is now an adjunct professor in the Department of Education, as well as doing all the other things he does, but he gives us his time freely, and we really do appreciate it. Joe, welcome back.
Thank you, Kent. And speaking of a successful run, I was driving here today and thinking about how far you all have come with this show, being on this since their first year. And,
yes.
Congratulations to you both for
How many shows
keeping
is this?
This is 382.
That's
Wow.
a lot of
Show
shows.
382.
And I do want to thank my friend here and really congratulate him on, in his other job, what he's done for not just Oklahoma City or greater Oklahoma City, but truly how he has led in his efforts to improve all of Oklahoma by what is happening here in the greater Oklahoma City area.
Well,
So
that's
congratulate.
nice of you to say. I appreciate
Amen.
that, yeah. There's no higher profile sports entity, though, than what goes on down in Norman at the University of Oklahoma in a wide variety of sports. We tape this show in mid-August. It airs exactly after your first game in football season. But what's the story of the moment down on the University of Oklahoma campus as far as athletics is concerned?
Whatever it is, it still pales in comparison to the start of football season. So we might be able to talk about it, but that's the story of the moment. The fact that we have a chance to have a very special year. We have questions that have to be answered on one side of the ball or the other. Obviously, we're playing a tough schedule. A lot of other teams are picked to finish strong as well, but the fact that Oklahoma is right there in the hunt again for a conference championship and a national championship, nothing can take place of that story. We have a lot of other good things going on. The campus itself is thriving. We have another outstanding group of freshmen coming in, and I'm sure it'll be a record-setting class as the other ones have been. And what we're trying to do to help underscore the importance of the institutional mission and do what we can with intercollegiate athletics, all that is always very important.
Well, it's harder than ever to be number one for very long, and the University of Oklahoma's program is among the top. How do you stay on top? Is it a problem of the is it a product of the coaching staff, the capital improvements that you must continually make? What do you work on a yearly basis to give your school the ingredients where they can succeed to the level that they have?
Well, resources are important, Mick, but we always win with people. Everything that we accomplish is a direct result of the quality of the people that we have, be it coaches, the student athletes they recruit, the support staff around them, then the resources that we give the talented people, because it's good to hire great people, but if you don't give them the tools necessary to be successful, then quite frankly, we're missing and falling short of really finding out how good they can really be. And so we try to make it a cohesive approach. And at the end of the day, though, it's always about the quality of the people, not just their skill, but their character. Because as you've seen, no matter what we do, no matter what anybody does in this business, there are going to be challenges, some very complex challenges. And if the people are great in their character, we're going to be able to overcome whatever it is.
I know, Joe, you're primarily responsible for the hiring of the head coaches, at least. But what I've always wanted to ask you, never have in all your appearances, is how do the assistant coaches actually get hired? Is that a product of your searching, or is that, let's just take football as an example. If Bob Stoops has an opening on his staff, how's that opening filled?
Well, Ken, that's a great question, and it's one that I've addressed from the day I hire a head coach, and then I certainly try to remind them of our commitment. I think one of the most important things a university can do, an athletic director can do, is find the right leader, find the right CEO of that sport, the head coach.
And you found Stoops.
Stoops, or Coach Stoops, or Jeff Capel, or some of the other coaches, Mark Williams, who's won 5 national championships out of his 8 years as a head coach. I mean, there have been some great stories there, but I also say the next most important thing I can do is give that coach the chance to hire the best staff, a dream staff, if they will. We understand it can be resource driven or have the components of the marketplace financially as salary goes, but quite candidly, they have to go hire someone in their mold, someone that brings something to the table. Like it's been said forever, the cliche, a good leader has to surround themselves with the right people, and I want to make sure that I give my head coaches the chance to do that. We may talk about it a little bit, but really it's ultimately their call, because at the end of the day, while we all are responsible to some degree, the head coach is going to be held accountable and responsible. So we've got to give them the chance to hire the people they want.
Let me change the subject, if I may. Article recently about the upcoming OU-Nebraska game with some kind of special activities associated with that game that aren't normally carried out. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, we've put a premium on bringing our former student athletes back to campus, in every sport for that matter. In football, we started it back in 99, actually 98, when we had the reunion of the 74, 75 back-to-back national championship teams. And we've wanted to work on bringing everybody that has been a part of our family back closer to the university. Started thinking about the 71 team. A lot of that had to do with what our friend Jack Mildren had been battling in terms of his health issues, and some of the other great players that were part of that group that needed to be recognized for whatever reason hadn't been. And the thing sort of blossomed. And I wanted to take advantage of also recognizing something that game, or the game that team played, commonly called the game of the century on
In
that
71, yeah.
Thanksgiving Day, what it meant to sport. Because while it determined who was going to play the national championship that year, who was going to win the conference championship, there's something that I remember as a young kid, and I wasn't even part of Oklahoma. I was living in South Florida watching that game on Thanksgiving Day, just like most of the country was. But I remembered something special, and it stuck with me all my life about how those two teams battled play after play. Everybody contributed something to that game, but there was just a feeling of immense respect. Players helping the other team off the field, up off the ground, and it just, for whatever reason, yes, Nebraska won that game, but everybody won if they were a fan of college football. Something happened that transcended the game itself. And it also related to the rivalry that Oklahoma and Nebraska had. I think you all can relate to the fact that it's one of immense respect itself. And we have a rivalry with Texas, and we have a rivalry with Oklahoma State, one of the few schools in the United States that have three rivals, if you will. But we needed to reinstitute the respect. And I quite honestly thought it was lost the last time Nebraska played here. And so I talked to Coach Osborne about it, who's now back as athletic director at Nebraska, about this idea. And I said, please wait, hear the whole thing before you respond. He thought it was great, and I've talked to him several times since. And we already have several commitments from Nebraska players because we wanted to invite them to come to the reunion just as much as the 71 team. So however many we get, we'll introduce them all, Oklahoma players and Nebraska players on the field the day we play Nebraska during that reunion.
That will be a special
It's unique.
day. Yeah.
I don't know anybody in college football doing anything like that.
That's right. Well, as far as what's going on between the rivalry with Texas, you brought it up. Where is that, and as far as where that game will be played for the next few years and long term?
As you know, there's been several instances where we've taken the opportunity to work with the city of Dallas and the State Fair Board to improve the Cotton Bowl. For whatever reason, for a lot of years, it just left the stadium to just exist, which really meant deteriorate. And so they have stepped up in a big way. They've spent, to date, somewhere near $60 million on renovating the stadium and expanding it. I've been down to see it myself. You know, it might sound like an exaggeration to say that the stadium environment has changed significantly because it's still basically, you know, the stadium it once was, but replaced all the seats. They've closed in the end zones. They've added more restrooms, more concession stands. There's now a concourse. You could literally walk around the whole stadium inside, which you really haven't ever been able to do before. It's a bowl. So, yeah. I mean, to think it could get louder than it's been would be making a statement, but it will be significantly louder. You just have to see it to believe it. I'm excited about it and really appreciate what they've done, and we've committed to stay there another 8 years. So we'll be there through 2014 or 15, I think it is.
Well, among, if not the premier rivalries in college football. Congratulations on that decision. I think it's the right one. That Oklahoma-Texas game is special, and it's special because of that Cotton Bowl atmosphere. Right. And I'm glad to see the city of Dallas starting to take a little bit of ownership in that game and that stadium. Both needed it.
I appreciate that, and I think our fans would agree with everything you said. That, you know, we know there's a brand new stadium being built there, and at one time it was considered to be built on the state fairgrounds, but we know the story there. But I think the fact that that whole situation between, you know, the atmosphere of the state fair and the game going on, and literally 50 to 100,000 people that just come to be part of the atmosphere that don't have a ticket, you just can't recreate that somewhere else. And I think our fans speak loudly that they want to continue it for as long as we can.
Joe Castiglione is our guest today on The Verdict. We'll be right back.
Home values are down in some states, but not in Oklahoma. Oklahoma's home values have increased 4.2% during the past 12 months. Unlike some states where home values have decreased as much as 20%. Good thing you're in Oklahoma. There may be real estate problems in some states, but there has never been a better time than now to buy or sell a home in Oklahoma. One of the most affordable states in the country, Oklahomans are buying and selling homes every day, and an Oklahoma realtor can show you how. Good thing you're in Oklahoma.
Okiwani is an Indian name for a place where children play. When we obtained the camp, we found a lot of oil debris left in the woods. We saw a commercial about how the oil and natural gas industry cleans up old oil well sites. We called the OERB and they agreed to remove tons of concrete and steel. It didn't cost us a thing. Thousands of children have left their footprints on this land. Thanks to the oil and gas industry, they will for a long time to come.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
We're back on The Verdict. Mick Cornett and Kent Myers with today's guest, University of Oklahoma Athletic Director Joe Castiglione. Kent, where do you want to go from here?
Well, let's talk about the NBA coming to Oklahoma City. How do you see that impacting one way or the other your programs at the university?
It's hard to quantify its impact in terms of attendance. I know when the Hornets were here, we had a challenge when some of our games occurred head-to-head with some of the NBA games. There were a number of fans that found themselves torn, and depending on the game, they may choose one or the other. But honestly, I think it has a chance to positively impact the sports community. Granted, it's done something very special for Oklahoma City and Oklahoma, having a major league franchise, and that's fantastic. But it also has a chance to bring more focus to the sport of basketball. We know how people are involved in Oklahoma football, and we don't see any kind of change in that. It's so ingrained in the culture and the fabric and the fiber of people here. But it has a chance to maybe make basketball more relevant. So we're hoping that get a bounce off it, if you will. We're fortunate we have a great coach in Jeff Capel, and we have a great coach in Sherry Cole, coaching our men's and women's basketball teams. And they've both been very successful. You know, one thing that we've talked about, we, for whatever reason, have a better reputation around the United States for Oklahoma basketball than we do right here in this media market. I mean, if you just look at the success over 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years, it's as good, as a good number of the higher profile programs around the country. Sure, there might be a team that's crept up there and it may be the hot team at the moment, but overall, Oklahoma basketball has achieved a great deal, and now we got a chance to have a great season with a lot of the young players we have. And of course, Sherry Cole's team has been in the top 10 the last 3 years, is number 3 in attendance in the United States behind Tennessee and UConn.
Wow.
So we have a lot going for us. We hope it's going to be very positive, and certainly we're going to use it to that end.
Jeff Capel has done a tremendous job in his first few years. Going back through that search and knowing all the success that the program has had was what allowed you to hire a coach of that caliber. Looking now where the program is, what are your comments, what are your thoughts on the men's basketball program?
Well, I think he's handled this particular opportunity about as good as anybody could have ever hoped for. He's recruited 2 really high-profile players to go along with some other great players. Got back into the NCAA tournament last year, won a game in the tournament, began to send the message that Oklahoma basketball is back on track. He's recruiting great kids. Getting Blake Griffin to stay, or creating the environment where Blake Griffin would want to stay, however you want to term that, was a big achievement, because we know he was going to be a highly regarded NBA draft choice, as he will be again after this year. So those things can't be understated. But I think the type of kid he's recruiting, to Oklahoma, they're not only exciting basketball players, but they're fitting into the culture of higher education, going to class, representing the program in the right way. And it's up to us now, too, to try to create the environment around our program to make it exciting and important to go to an Oklahoma basketball game. Like the previous question we talked about the NBA, we've got to do a good job adjusting our promotional and marketing techniques, and we are. We're rolling out a whole lot of different things here the next several weeks to try to get people back into the arena, make it more accessible. It's certainly going to be very affordable, and we want to give him all the support that he needs to keep that momentum going.
One of college basketball's biggest challenges is holding on to its star players because they are legally have opportunities to turn pro and seek employment. But you don't see that as much in the sport of football, and I think it tends over time to hurt the ability of colleges to continue to develop their tradition and to keep the fans coming back year after year. And you develop a star's name and then he's gone. Do you discuss that with other athletic directors and what you can do long term?
Yes, we do. And quite honestly, that's hurt our marketing efforts here. I'm not saying that's the reason, but just when people start to buy in, and want to come follow a player, they're gone, and whether it's a junior college player, which we've had some very good players come through here, or someone blossoms, right at the end of their career, that's the one thing about sports. They want to come identify. There's value. It's much more than just the cost of the ticket. There's something else that they embrace. If they want to be there, the cost of the ticket is not the impediment for most people. And certainly in our case, when we've been affordable for as long as I can remember, we have to work on that. It's a bigger issue, though, for us because we can't get the NBA to get their players union to go along with having a similar rule like we have in college football or actually in the NFL, where they have to stay at least 3 years. For whatever reason, the players union hasn't been willing to embrace that. And it's a kind of a chicken and the egg. You give a coach the question, well, if you have a chance to have a one-and-done player like a Kevin Durant, are you going to take a chance and take him? Well, absolutely they're going to take him. Why wouldn't they? But when we look at what it's doing to our sport, it's not a good thing. If the players want to go to the NBA, great. They should just go. Just go right out of college. Or if they want to play in Europe for a year and then come to the NBA, fine. But it has been disruptive. I think, if that's the way then it's going to be, then the emphasis is just, I think, exploitation of a player just so they could help a team and then be gone. And there's really no emphasis placed on academics. There really isn't. I mean, they can say it is, but it's not. So we've got to get a way to fix that problem, as amongst all the other problems we have with college basketball right now and what's going on in the summer programs and AAU. It's not good. Everybody knows it, and I think there's a lot of focus on trying to get it fixed.
Let's focus on something you're doing. I noticed you've just been appointed a co-chair or chair of an NCAA committee on academic progress. Tell us a little bit about that. What's involved with that?
Well, and we've talked about it on this show previously, the emphasis of the NCAA member institutions to reform all of the structure we have geared toward admissibility of prospected student athletes and continuing progress towards a degree and ultimately graduation. And kind of under this academic reform movement, there have been a lot of changes made in what's required to be eligible at a school, either initially or continuing during their period of eligibility. Obviously, we want to improve our graduation rates. That's goes without saying.
And that's happening.
There's no question it's happening. A lot of people think it should happen much more quicker than it is, but what the group I have is focused on is what this the initiative called the sort of metric we have in place, APR, or the academic progress rate, and what that has meant to changing the culture, behaviors, attitude, and the structure that institutions have for continuing eligibility and retention toward graduation, what it's meant to the progress. And so we're studying it in all of Division I. We recognize that's a wide group of schools, because it's not just the so-called 1A schools like the level we're on here at Oklahoma, but those that are 1AA as well. And there are a lot of different issues there. They're financial, the fact that they can't afford to have academic staffs at some universities like they do at the bigger universities, the fact that their academic profile is different at a certain school. Some have open admissions, a lot of different things. So Miles Brand, the president of the NCAA, has asked us to study that and see how we can make the improvements.
We are out of time, but thanks for coming by. And I understand that you recently completed your master's degree and are now teaching on campus. So Professor Castiglione.
Yes, Professor.
Thank you for coming by on The Verdict.
Well, thank you.
We appreciate it.
I know you both teach, so we have a nice little fraternity going on with a lot of others. It's been a great experience.
Joe Castiglione, the athletic director at the University of Oklahoma, today's guest. Kent and I'll have a final word after this.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information.
We are back wrapping up a show with Joe Castiglione.
Glad to have Joe back. He's always generous with his time.
We have website information. You can reach more information about OU sports at Soonersports.com. And of course, our website, theverdict.tv. For Kent Myers, I'm Mick Cornett. We'll see you next week on The Verdict.
The preceding program was produced exclusively for the Cox Channel.